Namo Buddhaya. Good morning and welcome, Dhamma brothers and Dhamma sisters and friends. This forum is aimed at understanding the different ways that we can manage the pandemic that has befallen us in this country. Since March of this year, we have been living under the MCO, Movement Controlled Order, and it's slightly changed condition, to be called the CMCO. And that has made many in our society live life in a way that we are not used to. There have been many restrictions, and because of that, people have felt that they cannot live life in the way that they have been used to. So this has given rise to very many negative side effects. So today we aim to discuss these side effects, and from the perspective of the Buddhist teachings, how do we manage them? But before we start with the first speaker, let me share with you some information in order to put into perspective what we are going to discuss. Here, I have put together a presentation of an article from the Malay Mail. And the title of this article is, "More than half of Malaysians experience mental health issues during the MCO," which was initiated in March. So what it tells us is very significant. When there is an MCO that is restricting the way we live life, it has resulted in negative emotions in many people. So what does this survey tells us? It's findings of a survey carried out by an organization called The Center. It tells us that 22% of those surveyed, there were about 1,028 people surveyed, 22% of those people reported experiencing severe and extremely severe anxiety. And the group were mainly women and those below the age of 35 who have reported this. And between 18 to 26% of the women in this category stated that they experience severe and extremely severe depression, anxiety, and stress due to the effects of the pandemic, which has changed the way we work, the way we live, and the way we earn a livelihood also have been affected. Of those under 35, approximately a third reported experiencing severe and extremely severe depression and anxiety. So from this survey, we also know that the places that people live have impacted the reactions, the responses to the MCO. So those who are living in low-cost housing, it was found that they exhibited more severe, extreme signs of depression, anxiety, and stress. And why is that so? And that is because when they live in housing units that are very crowded, the level of negative emotions seem to have risen. And that is because you can imagine during the MCO, people are forced to live in just four walls. They cannot go out, and if they go out, it's mainly to buy food, and some groceries. So they have to contend with each other. They have to live with each other, all of the waking hours, and that has given rise to all these anxiety. So here it says that those who lived in crowded households reported more extreme signs of depression. They can't get away. They can't remove themselves from the setting of their homes. So they have to cope with all the people around them. They eat with them, watch television, they have to learn how to get on with their relatives, their family, 24 hours a day. But it's not just those who lived in the crowded conditions. Those who lived alone, it was found, also experience slightly more severe depression and anxiety. So whichever way it is, this pandemic has affected the way we live. There's another survey that tells us, and this heading is Anxiety Levels Rise Among Malaysians Amid the Return of CMCO. And this is more current. It says here that in the beginning, the anxiety was due to the existence of the disease and the fear of getting exposed to the infection. When we hear about it, in February of this year, the fear of the disease brought about the anxiety and depression. But later, the causes of it was that people found the insecurity. They were unsure of what's going to happen to their livelihood, to the way that they earn a living. That became the causes of their anxiety and depression. And the effects of the economy also began to weigh on their minds. So I hope this information will give everyone the context of how we are going to look at the management and the relief from the negative emotions from the perspective of the Buddha's teachings. And the first speaker, we have invited 3 speakers. I term them the scholar, the upasika practitioner, and the doctor. The first speaker is Brother Benny Liao, who is a very well-known figure in the Buddhist circles. And I have known him for many years. And he has looked at this condition from the perspective of the Buddhist text. So now I welcome Brother Benny Liao to do his presentation.
Okay, good morning, and very glad all of you are here. The theme for today's forum is staying positive during the pandemic. So the $1 million question is, how do we stay positive? Well, the answer is to think positive. Okay, but it's easier said than done. It becomes like a cliche to say to think positive. I think what is really important is to think positive. We must be guided by our own personal philosophy, a philosophy of life. And that philosophy of life is what we can learn from the Buddha's teachings. For example, the Buddha says it's very important for us to have the right mental attitude before we can think positive. Having the right mental attitude means that we can either be positive or we could be negative. If we are positive, we respond to situations. We become proactive, we are joyful, and we are able to align with reality. But if our mental attitude is negative, then we only react to anxieties, to our worries, to our fears, to our hopes, and to our frustrations. So in order for us to cultivate that right mental attitude, self-control is very important. For example, as individuals, we can do very little to control the cause of the virus, the economic devastation left in its wake, and also the tragic loss of life around the world. But there's something that we could do. We can control our thoughts and we can control our behaviors. In one of the early Buddhist teachings, a teaching which the Buddha gave to a lay person called Nakula Pita, the Buddha says, householder, you should know when the body is suffering from disease or when the body is ill, you should constantly train so that the mind does not suffer from disease. And this is the famous saying, when the body is sick, make sure your mind is not sick. So very important that we develop a strong mind. Now, in order for us to develop a strong mind, in order for us to think positive, there is obviously a particular method or an approach that we need to take. For those of you who are familiar with the Vipassana movement, there is an acronym which has been popularly used, I think more than maybe 20 years, first coined by Michelle McDonald, and I think Tara Beck, you use it very frequently, is called RAIN. RAIN, the acronym RAIN. All right, just as if you on a hot day, we have a rain shower, makes you feel very relieved, very calm, very peaceful. So if you practice this 4-step approach or this acronym called RAIN, we not only will be able to think positive, we will live our life in a very positive manner. Now, what is this acronym RAIN all about? It starts with RAIN. So R means that we should reflect wisely on whatever happens. The A stands for to accept reality as it is, seeing things as they really are, as we would say. The I stands for to investigate our feelings, our thoughts, our sankharas, for example. And the N is interpreted variously as non-identification or non-attachment. So let's look at R. R means to reflect wisely. And in the famous Sabbasava Sutta, which is in the Majjhima Nikaya, Book of Middle Langsing, the second sutta, the Buddha has got this excellent advice. He says, for one who reflects wisely, anxieties and troubles that have not yet arisen do not arise, and those already arisen will cease. So likewise, for one who does not reflect wisely, then anxieties and troubles that have not yet arisen will arise, and those that have already arisen will increase. So the Buddha himself talks a lot about having wise, because all this goes back to the importance of knowing our mind. As many of you would remember, the first 2 verses of the Dhammapada says that mind is the forerunner of all things, that if one speak or act with a wicked mind, then suffering will follow ones. And likewise, if one speak or act with a pure mind, happiness follow ones. All right, just as one's shadow that never leaves. So it's very important for us to recognize. All right, so that's the first R. Okay. Now, recognizing phenomena, recognizing the nature of reality. Okay, so first we can to recognize and what is the nature of reality. In the classic Buddhist teachings, we talk about 3 characteristics of existence, which is impermanence, suffering, and non-self. For example, I'm always very inspired by this saying by Ajahn Chah from his book called Everything Rises, Everything Falls Away. And this is what Ajahn Chah says: when the mind is agitated, you should realize this is not certain, this is impermanent, the first characteristics of existence. But likewise, when the mind is calm, don't start thinking, really peaceful, because that is also not certain. So I think if you have been following Ajahn Chah's teaching, there's been Ajahn Amaro, for example, would always say that sometimes people say, does Ajahn Chah, does he not talk anything else other than that things are uncertain, things are impermanent? All right? But that's the nature of reality. So if we don't talk about reality, what do we talk about? All right. So the first thing I think is for us to recognize reality. When we can recognize that, then whatever happens, we will be able to develop a calm attitude. And this is where, my favorite saying from Shantideva in the Bodhicharyavatara, where Shantideva says that if a problem can be solved, why worry? And if a problem cannot be solved, worrying will do you no good. So that has been a kind of my mantra, that whenever I've got problems, so it reminds me, remember Shantideva. All right. Well, you've got a problem. If I can solve it, okay, go and solve it. If there's a problem and I know that it can't be solved, worrying is not going to do me any good. All right. So because of that, then we adopt a positive attitude. Now, the second is to accept reality. RAIN, R-A-I-N. So the second one, to accept reality. Now, I'm not going to go into details. I think many of you know about this discourse which the Buddha gave. The Buddha says there are 5 things we should contemplate daily. And this is not only for monks, it's for lay people as well. And this is found in the Upajjhatthana Sutta, Book of 5 and 5 things in the Book of Gradual Sayings. Aging, illness, death, separation, cause and effect. So all these things, they are there. All right. The moment you are born, in fact, it is said, what is birth? Birth is the forward view of death. And what is death? Death is the backward view of birth. So we go through this cycle of birth and rebirth. That's reality. Nobody can escape from illness. Right? So the reality of existence is that uncertainty and change are realities of our existence. So to think that things should be otherwise adds unnecessary fear to our lives. We create suffering. So part of making peace with our reality, no matter what it is to accept impermanence, to accept that there is a lack of control, there's uncertainty, and there's unpredictability. All right. So you look at human existence, right? But having said that, it does not mean that we don't take care of our old age. It doesn't mean that we are careless with our health. All right. It definitely doesn't mean that we are irresponsible with our precious human life. Even in the Buddha's teachings, there are many occasions the Buddha says this human life that we have is really precious. Yet that human life, which is so precious, is also very impermanent. Okay? So it means that we understand its natural characteristics, its nature to change. Okay, so that's when we are able to accept. All right, so the first we recognize, then we accept. And the third aspect of that RAIN acronym is when we investigate. We investigate our feelings, for example. When thoughts and feelings arise, are they positive thoughts? Are they negative thoughts? For example, if we feel miserable, we feel sad. Now, this leads to hate, it leads to anger, it leads to jealousy. Then they are what, to use a modern, or to use Dan Goleman's term, they are destructive emotions. But if the reverse mental states arise, then they are positive emotions. All right? So we investigate our feelings. Now, when we investigate our feelings, then it reminds us about another great teaching the Buddha gave in the Salata Sutta, where it is called the parable of the two arrows. I'm sure some of you have heard about it. It says that the first arrow is the physical pain. The second arrow, which one shoots oneself, is the emotional reaction to the first arrow pain. Now, the first arrow is inevitable, just as illness, suffering, old age, that's inevitable. It's part of being in samsara, all right? Samsara is never fun, all right? But we are here. So the second arrow is not inevitable. So it is preventable suffering. So that's where you have this cliche that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. So we can do something about that suffering. The Buddha, for example, he lived up to age 80. Towards the later part of his years, he had a lot of physical pain. And many of you have heard, once he was walking and he had to pause, he had to hold on to the trunk of a tree, and he told Ananda, this old body is old, is weak. So that is the first arrow, physical suffering. But the Buddha did not lament and say, why must it be me? Why must I be the one suffering? He realized that that's the nature of things. The second arrow did not shoot him. The second arrow did not hurt him. Okay? So for us to think positive, we must remember, first arrow, we can't do much. But let us not be shot by the second arrow. All right? Please read the Salata Sutta. It's a wonderful teaching in the Book of Connected Discourses. So when we investigate our feelings, when we investigate our thoughts, when we investigate sankhara, for example, we learn to live in the present. For example, when we investigate, then we realize that the future is unknown. Nobody actually knows, for example, when COVID-19 virus will disappear, when we will have a vaccine. All right. 2 days ago, we heard some good news, all right, from Oxford University that they may have a vaccine. But really, we do not know when we will get that vaccine, or whether even the CMCO, all right, will it be extended? Are we not going to have Christmas? Are we not going to have Chinese New Year? We don't really know. So it's useless to speculate about it and live in fear. We not only worry about the future, but sometimes, or maybe not sometimes, I think a lot of times, since the lockdown began, we cling to the past, right? So our mind is rarely in the present moment. And this is where mindfulness practices comes in, teaching us to be aware, right? Living in the present. In the Bhaddikarata Sutta, the Buddha talks about the importance of being in the present, okay? Let not a person revive the past, or on the future build his hopes. For the past has been left behind, and the future has not yet been reached. So what is important is the very present itself. Okay, so it's something, if we live in the present, then we will be happy. I remember many years ago when His Holiness the Dalai Lama was promoting his latest book then called The Art of Happiness. Then a reporter came and asked His Holiness, "Your Holiness, you wrote this wonderful book. Could you tell us when was the last time, or when was the happiest moment that you had? Could you tell us when was the last time you had the happiest moment?" His Holiness looked at the reporter for a while. He smiled and said, "The moment is now. The moment is here and now." All right. So here and now. So the present, that's really what is important. And that is what makes us very positive. Now, the other thing is when we investigate, we also realize that in life itself, there is what we call the 8 winds. Now, again, I'm not going to go into details about this. You can read this in the Loka Vipatti Sutta, which is in the Book of Gradual Sayings, Book of 8. So there are 8 things, or 4 pairs, or what is called, what the Narada Mahathera uses the word, vicissitudes of life. All right, gain and loss, fame and ill fame, praise and blame, happiness and sorrow. With this pandemic, we experience losses, right? We experience sorrow. We also experience blame. But the only antidote for overcoming these uncertainties is to develop equanimity through non-attachment. All right. So this brings us to the fourth, which is the fourth of the acronym RAIN, which is N, R-A-I-N. So look at N, which is non-attachment or non-identification. But the non-attachment does not necessarily mean that we become cold as a stone. Emotions don't cease to exist as we learn to let go. We just relate to them differently because we understand their transient nature. In fact, non-attachment brings out the most profound sense of care, compassion, and freedom in all of us. Okay? So the beauty of non-attachment is that the problem of this world evokes compassion rather than anger. All right? And you don't chase after happiness. You create conditions for happiness. So when it arises, you enjoy it. And you release it when it dissolves. So it does not mean that when you are non-attached, you do not know how to appreciate beauty. Even the Buddha appreciated beauty. I'm sure many of you remember this story. Once the Buddha was walking past this river Naranjara, and he walked past, he paused, and he spoke to Ananda. He said, "Look at the beauty of the water flowing." So one could still have non-attachment and yet still appreciate beauty. But the difference is, when it arises, we can enjoy it, and we release it when it dissolves. All right. Lama Yeshe used to say, it doesn't mean that you're non-attached means you stop enjoying ice cream. If you love ice cream, you can still go for ice cream. When you found that you have your favorite ice cream, you enjoy it. But if on that day, when you go to your favorite ice cream parlor, your favorite variety is not there, doesn't matter. It's uncertain. Like Ajahn Chah said, "Mai ne," in Thai, right? Doesn't matter. The next day you can have it, right? So it dissolves, right? So your heart only grows bigger when you see the suffering in this world. All right? That's the very reason why the Buddha stayed back for 45 years to teach the Dhamma for the benefit of all sentient beings. So you feel naturally compelled to help, but you're not attached to the outcome. Okay? So I think that's the beauty of non-attachment. So to be positive, we not only think of ourselves, we think of others. Why? Because we live in a connected world. All right? For those of you who are familiar with Mahayana Buddhism, you have read the Avatamsaka Sutra. We are all caught in this Indra's net. We are caught in Indra's net. So instead of just worry and anxiety, let's connect with others with kindness and compassion. So when fear arises, it leads to unkind, prejudicial, racist views, violent behavior. So now is not the time to think only about ourselves, but it's time for us to think of others. That means we think instead of me, we think of we. All right. So we adopt this, we put into practice this acronym, RAIN. We recognize the nature of existence. We accept the nature of existence. We investigate what this nature of existence is all about. And having investigated, we let it go. We let it go. We do not get attached to it. But the more we're not attached to it, the more we are interconnected with other sentient beings. All right. So we not only cherish ourselves, we cherish others. So with that, let me end by making a short prayer for the benefit of all sentient beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free of suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings always be joyful. And may all sentient beings be in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger. May all of you be well and happy. May all of you be free from mental suffering. May all of you be free from physical suffering. And most important, may all of you be free from the COVID-19 virus. Thank you very much. Sadhu.
Thank you, Brother Benny, for your sharing. I found that what Brother Benny advised us, the practices under the acronym of RAIN, can be very beneficial if we practice it well. The practices of reflection, acceptance, investigation, and non-identification, I feel will help us to manage all these feelings and thoughts and emotions that are not beneficial to us and lead us into more beneficial states of happiness and the sense of well-being. Thank you, Brother Benny. Now we invite Sister Paru, who is also another well-known speaker, to share with us her experiences.
Forum panelist, Brother Benny, Dr. Ong, forum moderator Acharya Tan Siang Chye, beloved Dhamma friends, good morning and Namo Buddhaya. Homage to him, the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the perfectly enlightened one. I dedicate the merits of this Dhamma sharing to all my parents and my teachers. Wherever they are, may they be safe and peaceful. So thank you, Brother Benny, for giving us these very beautiful and succinct scriptural references and explanation in staying positive in this pandemic. I have been asked to share some personal stories and experiences related to this topic. So let me start on how my personal journey began. In the Itta Sutta, Anguttara Nikaya, Book of Fives, Sutta number 43, the Buddha said to the householder Ananda Pindika, he said, these are 5 things that are welcome, that are agreeable, pleasant, and hard to obtain in this world. What are the 5? They are long life, beauty, happiness, status, and heavenly rebirth. The Buddha also said, these 5 things cannot be obtained by way of prayers or by wishes. Otherwise, who would lack them, right? Instead, the Blessed One said that one who follows the path of Dhamma would lead them to have these 5 desirable conditions. So this teaching, brothers and sisters, very aptly described my life before I came into contact with the teachings. Who does not want these 5 things? As for rebirth, I only knew there was heaven and hell, okay lah, little bit. But my knowledge on the destination after death, that the choice was very obvious, right? But when I learned there was rebirth and future lives, wow, I was so terrified. I was like, what? Die lah. And in the thick of living this very, very ignorant life, my husband passed away in July 1999 after a very short illness. Everything happened very fast. When the funeral was over, family and friends went back to their own lives. The children were back at school, and I was all alone at home, with my back to the wall, and I was sitting near the altar, sobbing my heart out. And at that moment, I just felt like dying. The pain of separation was unbearable. At that moment, my eyes caught sight of this very little small booklet that had been on the shelf of the altar. I remembered at that time, my husband actually asked me to read that book. But at that time, I was too full of pride, and I ticked him off by saying, "You read it, I am too busy." So I reached out, and maybe he, in his depth of kindness, probably was pushing me to read the book. There was this story of these two women, Kisa Gotami and Patachara, who they themselves were having heartbreak and mental suffering due to the loss of their dear and loved ones. And the Buddha's words rang out loud and clear to me. The Buddha said, "Long have you experienced the death of a mother, a father, a brother, sister, son, or daughter, and even with loss to regard to our relatives, wealth, and disease. We have also lost things which are very dear and pleasing to us, and that which is not that which we want, but we are separated from." And the Buddha said, we have been transmigrating and wandering in this samsaric circle over so long that all the tears that we have cried can fill the 4 oceans of this world. I reflected on those words. When I read it, I reflected, and how true it was. When my father died, I was utterly sad. My brother was only about 21. He had just married about a year ago, and his wife had just delivered a baby boy. Her cries were so painful to hear. And when my mother died, friends, we lived in our mother's womb for 9 months. She is part of our body. And when our mother dies, it's like part of us, there's a big hollow inside of us. And I realized I was not the first person to experience death, and neither will I be the last. So from this episode of my life, I can share with you 4 valuable teachings that have helped me to live happily in the midst of change and uncertainty. The very first lesson that I learned is the fundamental teaching of anicca, or impermanence. Friends, nothing is certain, permanent, or remains the same, no matter how lovely or even how difficult it is. This pandemic has changed so much of our life, our work routine, home life, traveling, socializing. Totally the way we spend our life on a daily basis has changed. We are joined with what is displeasing, and we are separated from what is pleasing. And we are not getting what we want, right? But hopefully, sometime soon in the future, all this will be over, and something new is going to replace this pandemic. One day, my son came home from work, and he informed me that all the employees in the company had to take a pay cut. But as compensation, they were given a day off. Fair enough, still bearable, yeah? But as the MCO went into CMCO and then went to EMCO, the inevitable news of retrenchment came. That day he came back from home, he was very sad. And I asked him why. He said, at first he didn't want to tell me. Then later he shared with me, by today, 7 o'clock, the company will call us. If we receive that phone call, we don't have to go to work tomorrow. So we waited. And friends, this is a lesson in impermanence. Today you are having a job, tomorrow you are jobless. And it so happened you can get a job back again, right? So things change. Although he did not get that phone call that day, we took time to discuss, we supported each other, and in his anxiety, we also reflected on the situation. And most importantly, we also shared merits with those who were retrenched that evening. So the positive news is that despite the retrenchment and taking all their retrenchment benefits, I heard most of them are now employed. So in the early days of the pandemic, I used to wonder, oh dear, am I going to die from this virus? I used to get worried, So Then I reflected, actually, Sister Paru, one day you're going to die, my dear friend. And it can be from any cause. You can have a heart attack. You can just fall down and die, right? So worrying never stops bad thing from happening. But it stops us from enjoying what is here in this present moment. So why fear? And why worry? Like Brother Benny said, if you cannot solve it, why worry, right? So I started beginning this reflection, which I think Brother Benny has also shared with us in the Anguttara Nikaya Book of 5 about we have not gone beyond aging, illness, death. Everything will be separated from us one day. Good, very good reflection for us. And the most important reflection for me was that whatever we do, the way we speak, the way we think, and our bodily actions, all these will add to our karmic content. And so I decided that whatever I do, I want to maintain a very positive and wholesome action, not only for the welfare of myself, but for the welfare of others. Number 2, friends, we can change difficult situations into opportunities for us. There was a time when I was also working, when the company was going through some very bad times, there was some change in shareholders, and they told us that we will probably be given termination letters. Again, my mind was frustrated. There was a lot of fear, and some uncertainty began to swirl in my mind. My mind would not shut up. There was this very insistent, persistent dialogues in my mind. What am I going to do? How am I going to pay the bills? My life is a mess. Everything is so awful. I became very moody, temperamental, complain a lot, and then generally very, very negative about everything. At that time, the company employed many expatriates, and they were all provided accommodation, fully furnished accommodation, ranging 5,000 and above. So I was the one in charge of preparing all their payments. And then I realized one day this thought occurred to me. Hey, why don't I become an estate agent? Then I close one deal in a month, 20 over days, I can relax. Such was the simple mind that I had at that time, an ignorant mind. And then I thought to myself, reflecting, as Brother Benny just now shared with us, reflection is one of the ways that we can change from the negative to the positive. And I asked myself, actually, what am I afraid of? Why don't I do something in my life? Every time I always live in fear and not doing the things I wanted to do. I said, why don't I challenge myself this time? And by a coincidence, I met the boss of a property company, and things changed for me. And then, although I did not know much about, I don't like sales. I don't like meeting people, and I don't like I did not know anything about selling property, but I prevailed, and I overcame my fear of being an estate agent or doing something out of my comfort zones. Another good example, which recently happened, which I think really inspired me, was my son asked me to receive a parcel on his behalf. And that morning I was waiting for the delivery truck. Usually the big trucks will come and then they will deliver the parcel. But that particular day, there was a small kanchil came with a young lady driver. And then I was thinking, don't tell me this is the delivery. It really was the delivery person, And when I walked to the gate, I saw the whole car is loaded with so many parcels from the floorboard right up to her seat. There were many parcels for delivery. So you can see from these friends that even this young lady, I'm sure that is not the work that she was doing, but she was doing it, and she was very happy and a very joyful person. So we can see if we think positively, things can be good for us. The third, as just Brother Benny also shared with us, the mind is the forerunner of all states. Mind is chief, mind made are they. So this great, beautiful teaching of the Buddha is everything how we feel and do is driven by the mind. So training, cultivating, and disciplining the mind has helped me during this pandemic. By anchoring the mind to be mindful of negative states, I move beyond potential suffering to find calmness and acceptance. I complained less. When I made mistakes, I asked for forgiveness. I happily cook. You know, when you are a mother and you are all homebound, you have to cook all the meals, and you know how stressful that can be. But I made sure that when I cooked and I served those meals, I was very joyful that I know that I was providing nourishment to two beings that in the future could be potential. Who knows? They also can be free of this suffering. And there was ample time for me to meditate, many opportunities to hear the Dhamma via online. And basically, having a lot of opportunities during this by making sure the mind was always I will check my mind. Okay, what is my mind doing now? So I will investigate what is going on the mind if I happen to find that it is creating negative states for me. During this Deepavali celebration, I'm sure many people would have been very unhappy. And even there was a case of this young man trying to drive against the traffic to reach his home. That was the state of his mind. I was wondering what was his state of mind for him to do that. And then now he ended up in jail. So instead of getting angry and disappointed, I realized that many of us in the same boat. Nobody can go back. So what's the point of complaining or being unhappy? So instead, what we choose to do is actually to support another needy family who are just living near our place, so that they too can at least have a peaceful celebration. The fourth thing, brothers and sisters, is having a very supportive spiritual community. In the busyness of our life, we always tend to alienate ourselves. We try to overlook the importance of having very close-knit families, spiritual friends, and a practicing community to support us. Individually, we may walk the path, but ultimately, we need to walk with friends, especially those who support our aspirations to be in truth. So, when we get into difficulties, we really will appreciate. Let me just tell you one case. When my husband was alive, when he was very ill, at that time every day is like going to the hospital, staying with him, and I have to take care of the children and also attend to my work. So it was really taking a lot of, I was just physically drained and very, very mentally, and I was physically drained. Family, yeah, they used to come during the weekends. They used to give some kind of support. But other than that, I was all on my own. Even to get professional help, I didn't have anybody. So I was very confused, and there was no one to support me emotionally. And it was really a very heavy, heavy burden for me. A few years ago, one of our Dhamma brothers, his brother passed away on the eve of Chinese New Year. Many of us were back at our hometowns when we received the news. But those who were residing locally and who yet to go back to their hometowns, many of them stayed back and to help this brother and his family in their time of need. They even missed their reunion dinner and delayed their journey home for the Chinese New Year. So this very selfless offering of time and assistance to this family in sorrow, I'm sure would have made a very big difference to them. Helping to make all the funeral and post-funeral arrangements surely would have been easier for them. Dear friends, when my husband passed away, even my own colleagues, they refused to attend the funeral. Why? Because they say it's pantang. For them, they say business people cannot attend. I was very in shock when I heard this news. But when we have spiritual friends, we go beyond all this, unnecessary thinking, which is very negative and useless thinking. So there are many instances which I cannot tell you many of them, but our spiritual community is very supportive and helping those who need care and help. As a Dhamma practitioner and as a good friend, we all can help ourselves by practicing these 4 sublime states. That is, living happily with the people around us. Now we cannot go very far. We have to be in a very contained space. So we have to learn how to live happily with the people around us with a lot of metta. Then we have to be compassionately extend our awareness, our support to those who need our help with a lot of compassion, that is karuna. And then we rejoice in the goodness of others rather than the fault of others. If we find there is things that is not going our way, rather than finding fault, we rejoice. We look for the goodness in them and we rejoice with mudita. And when we are affected, most of us, when we read this news and social media, there are many, many negative views, comments, and then there are these views that people have. And then what we can do is to accept and maintain upekkha or equilibrium. So let me just give you a short simile of the rock. Batu, the rock. So our fears, worries, and anxiety, we generate from this very negative mind of ours. When we have a negative mind, we have fear, anxiety, and worry. So if this is like a heavy rock, we like to carry it about, very happy, I like to carry about this big rock in our head, so-called head. So somebody will come around and say, hey, please, can you put it down? It'll be good for you. You can do this and you can do that. But somehow or other, we will still carry it with us because it is like very familiar and very, it's like, it's part of us. We think that is the way our life is. But friends, when we really put it down, until we are very tired, we put it down, and then we feel at ease. And when we understand that letting go, we can see for ourselves the difference between carrying these negative thoughts and having the positive thoughts, because the negative thoughts are so heavy, like the rock. But we let go and have positive thoughts. Our thoughts are very light, easy, and peaceful. So who here wishes for failure, sickness, difficulties? Nobody, right? So when I started this sharing, I said that all of us want happiness all the time. But the Buddha asked us to see the truth. That is, any changes that come in our life, see it as it is. Very powerful, it is very sharp, and it is very true. So things may not go the way we want it to go, or as we like it to go. Not always, not all the time anyway. So in the vicissitudes of our life, we have two options available to us. The first is we can be negative, we can break down, we can give up, or we can build up our resilience and endure our difficulties with a positive attitude. As for me personally, I am really, really, really grateful for the Buddha's teachings because, one, I now understand actually why I am here in this lifetime. Number two, the Buddha's teachings has given me all the necessary tools to make the best use of my life here and in the now. Number three, as long as I am here, I choose to make this life a blessing, not only for myself, but also for others. And every day, when I wake up in the morning and before I go to bed, I tell myself, this is truly a wonderful, wonderful day for me. And every day I tell myself, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Oh, yeah. And friends, stay positive with the Dhamma. Good health, peace, and happiness to you. Sukhi hontu. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu. Thank you very much, Sister Paru. Yeah. I found that what the Sister Paru has shared with us, from a very personal point of view, helps us to understand the human conditions. That is how we react, to difficult times, a lot better. And if we put into practice what Sister Paru has recommended to us, I'm sure we will build up strength of mind to be able to endure difficult times. So now we would like to invite the third speaker who will share with us his understanding from a medical point of view. And he is Dr. Ong, who will speak to us using his wealth of experience as a medical practitioner. Dr. Ong.
Namo Buddhaya to everyone, to Brother Siang Chye, Brother Benny, Sister Paru, to the organizing committee, and to you, the audience. Right. I've been asked to talk about mental strength and resilience from the medical perspective. So I'm going to approach this talk by asking and then answering three very important questions. The first question is, what is mental strength or resilience? Question number 2, what are the common traits that people with mental strength have? Question number 3, how then do we cultivate mental strength? How then do we make our mind strong? And since I have a lot of grounds to cover in the next 20 minutes or so, I will dive straight into question 1. What is mental strength or resilience? Mental resilience is defined as the ability to adapt well to adversity, trauma, tragedy, and threats, and any significant source of stress. It is our ability to bounce back from adversities and difficulties in life, and sometimes emerge even stronger and better than when we first started out. Take, for example, this COVID-19 pandemic that we are all in. It has been a physical threat to us. It is a threat to our very existence. It has threatened our mental well-being as well as our physical well-being. In addition, it has robbed us of a lot of things that we take for granted in our daily life. For example, we now have lost the freedom to move freely. We now have lost the freedom to mix with people as and when we want. And we have even lost our financial security. For a lot of people, they have lost their jobs. And for many more, they are hanging on to their jobs by a tiny thread, not knowing when they will still have a job or not when the pandemic is over. Right? And Sister Paru also has shared with us her own personal tragedies in her talk. Right? So, these are difficult times. So how is it that some people are able to cope well in this kind of adverse situations while others cannot? Well, studies have shown that the deciding factor is not actually the adverse event itself. It's not what happens outside. What is important and the main contributing factor to whether you succeed or not is what is inside here, in our mind. It's our mindset. It's our beliefs about ourselves and the world we live in. It is about the mental habits that we already have within us. Right? People with certain kind of mental traits and qualities are able to withstand and cope better in adverse times than others. And that brings me to the second question. What are some of the common traits that people with mental strength have? And for that, the first and most important mental trait is self-awareness. Self-awareness is the ability to be aware of our own thoughts and feelings. It is being mindful of our thoughts and feelings. This is important because with the ability to be aware of our thoughts and feelings, we have self-knowledge. With this self-understanding and self-knowledge, we are then able to know our own strengths and weaknesses and to overcome those weaknesses. That's why self-awareness is the key trait in anybody who is mentally strong. The second trait is emotional regulation. Emotional regulation here refers to our ability to manage our emotion well. It's emotional intelligence, EQ. And most importantly, we must be able to manage our negative emotions. Things like anger, fear, anxiety, depression. These are the negative emotions during this time, this difficult time, that we must manage well. It is particularly important now. So, emotional regulation is trait number 2. Trait number 3 is realistic assessment of the situation. What this means is we are able to differentiate facts from fiction, accurate, truthful information from fake news. We are able to also separate our own prejudices and our own dramatizing things from what is actual, so that we are able to see things clearly and therefore can respond appropriately to the situation. Then come trait number 4. Trait number 4 is the willpower and the courage to endure these difficult times. During this difficult time, we need to persevere, to have that determination to carry on despite the difficulties. And trait number 5 is the ability to focus. What this means is we have the ability to focus on what is good and not what is bad. What is positive, not what is negative. What we can do instead of what we cannot do. What we have instead of what we have lost. So this ability to focus is very important, not just during time of adversity, but it is important for anyone who wants to succeed in life. In fact, a whole book has been written about this topic on focus. And to me, these 5 traits are the essential traits that anyone with mental strength must have in order to cope. Once you have these 5 traits, there are a list of other positive traits that they also have, but they will fall into place because you have these 5 traits. For example, you can have another trait where you have high self-regard, self-esteem, and self-confidence. But that comes because once you have this self-knowledge, you know your own strengths and weaknesses, the confidence comes naturally, right? Then trait number 7, flexibility of mind. This is the ability to adapt to change and the ability to have creative solution. So you have to have the ability to think outside the box. And trait number 8 is the ability of these people to establish strong relationship and bonds with people around them, their family members, their friends, and their colleagues. In fact, studies have shown that this last trait, the ability to create strong bonds with people, is most crucial at the times when you are at your knees, when you are unable to cope. Because this is the time when they are there to support you, to encourage you, to help you back onto your feet. This is what Sister Paru was referring to when she said that as a Buddhist community, we must come forward, reach out to those who are in need. It is an important and crucial factor for anyone who is down, because this is the one that first helped them to get back on their feet. And that brings us to question number 3. How do we cultivate mental strength? How do we make our mind stronger and better than before? Well, the first step is actually this strong relationship which we just talked about. Because when you are down and out, when you don't feel that you have the energy to carry on, your family members, your friends who are there to support you, to encourage you, they are the one who will help to get you back on your feet. So it's crucially important. So let's hope our Buddhist family will provide this support when the time comes, when someone needs it. Then step number 2 that we need to take is self-care. This is to care for ourselves both physically and mentally. Physically, we must take care of our diet, our nutrition. We must make sure that we drink enough water so that we are well hydrated. We must also make sure that we do our exercise. Even if we can't do exercise outdoor because of all these restrictions, we can do some simple exercise indoor. And also we need to get our rest and sleep. Now, in difficult times like this, sometimes we may have a lot of worries and we think too much so that it disturbs our ability to fall asleep. This is when we need to take care of our mind too. And what this means is we need to slow down our thinking to distract our negative mind to something more positive or neutral. In this aspect, one of the ways that you can do to calm your mind is actually chanting. Chanting helps us to take our mind from the negative to something that is either neutral or positive. And if we focus on our chanting properly, we can actually come out with a calm and clear mind, right? And that would give us a chance to see our problem clearly, more realistically. Also, in this difficult time, it is important to remind ourselves to have self-compassion. That means we need to be kind and gentle to ourselves. Very often, we are unkind to ourselves, but kind to other people. It seems that it is difficult to be kind to ourselves, but it's easier for us to be kind to others and to animals. Well, now is the time for you to be kind to yourself, to give yourself gentle encouragement and words of kindness, right? Remember this. This is an important self-care. Step number 3, we have to cultivate a positive mindset. How do we do that? We have to start looking at things from a different perspective, have a paradigm shift. Brother Benny has talked about the 3 characteristics of life: suffering, the impermanence, and non-self, right? In good times, actually, when we talk about suffering, a lot of people think, why is Buddhism so pessimistic? But it is exactly in difficult times like this that actually, when we reflect on these 3 characteristics of life, we see some hope, some redemption, and we can be optimistic. Why do I say that? Because when we reflect on the universality of suffering, that all human beings share the same suffering, then we feel it's not so bad. Then we reflect that this suffering too is impermanent. This too shall pass. This suffering shall pass. And therefore, it makes us feel that there is hope, that the end will come, right? And we look at suffering in a non-personal way, in an impersonal way, so that we don't see that we are singled out to suffer, right? A little bit of shift can provide a lot of hope and optimism in this case, right? Also, we need to see that sometimes in this kind of adversity, there are opportunities. Like Sister Paru says, try something new. You never know. You could actually succeed in something new. In fact, it is a good opportunity for some people to change the direction of their life totally, right? So look at it as an opportunity as well. Also, to make sure that we have positive mental attitude, remember, we need to train our focus, to focus on what is good, to focus on what we can do, to focus on what we have. In other words, we need to learn to be grateful for what we already have. There are 3 ways we can remind ourselves to be grateful. The first thing is to be grateful for the things that are going right in our life. Despite this pandemic, there are a lot of things that are still going right in our life. Be grateful for that. Then, be grateful for the things that do not go wrong. What do I mean by that? Every day we still go to work. We travel to and fro. The fact that we reached our workplace safely, we didn't meet with an accident, or we didn't have a punctured tire, or we didn't meet with a roadblock that prevent us from getting to work. These are things that could have gone wrong, but we take them for granted when we reach there. So the things that do not go wrong is something also we can take for granted. We can take as to be grateful for, right? And lastly, we can even be grateful for things that have gone wrong, but we learn a lesson from it, a valuable lesson from it. So learn to be grateful. Tune our mind to be grateful. Okay, these are the ways you can make your mind a bit more positive. Then step number 4, we need to recognize and be aware of our irrational thoughts, thoughts that are not realistic, beliefs that are no longer serving us, and our old mental habits that are actually a stumbling block to our progress instead of helping us. Right? Each time we are able to catch our thought, we should ask ourselves these important questions. Is my thinking helping or harming me? If your thinking is helping you, continue on. But if your thinking is harming you, it is time you change it, replace it, challenge that thinking. Right? In this way, you can change irrational thoughts into something more positive and beneficial to you. That is step number 4. And finally, step number 5, we have mentioned before. Find a new purpose, a new passion, a new interest. Try something new, like what Sister Paru said. Okay, so these are the 5 steps that we can take to cultivate and strengthen our mind. Step number 1, support from friends and family when we are down. Step number 2, self-care, both body and mind. Step number 3, positive mindset. See things differently. Look for opportunity. Be grateful. Step number 4, recognize irrational thoughts that are no longer serving us. Change them. Replace them. And step number 5, find a new purpose, a new goal, a new passion, a new interest. So in summary, actually, what we have been discussing is inner transformation of our mind. We do not need to change anything externally outside of us, which we cannot control anyway. But what we can do is to control what is within us, our mind. So this inner transformation is the key to coping with any kind of adversity. In fact, this inner transformation is what the Buddha regarded as true miracle. This is the only true miracle the Buddha regarded, right? Not miracles performed by psychic power. The Buddha reminds us that a man who is able to conquer himself is superior to a king who has conquered 1,000 battles. Right? And if we continue to work on our mind, to purify it, to transform it, we are actually following the advice of all the Buddhas, avoiding evil, doing good, and purifying the mind. Right? And as Buddhists, we are already familiar with all the tools that are necessary for these transformations. We have mindfulness practice. Mindfulness practice is our tool to be aware of our thoughts and feelings. Right? We have discernment, the ability or the practice of seeing things as they really are. This helps us to see things and assess things realistically, and therefore able to come up with the appropriate solution. Right? We have the practice of acceptance, accepting the things that cannot be changed. And then we have the practice of letting go of the things in our mind that are no longer serving us. So these are the tools that we as Buddhists are very familiar with. And therefore, there is no excuse for us to not put them all into practice. Especially in difficult times like this, we need them. Right? And that brings to the conclusion of my talk. And with that, I wish you good health, happiness, and peace of mind. Namo Buddhaya.
Sadhu. Thank you very much, Dr. Ong, for your precious sharing that has come through your years of medical practice. I've noted that Dr. Ong's suggestions of finding support from family and friends is very essential for us to have in order to go through difficult periods. And also this aspect of taking care of ourselves, body and mind, is also very important. So I hope the audience will take note of that. Then there is this development of a positive mindset. We need to have positivity. We need to see things with a bright sense of mind, and not with a very dull and a very depressed perspective. And the fourth one Dr. Ong talked about was how do we recognize irrational thoughts? And if these thoughts start to appear in us, we are aware of them, we should take action. Don't let them stay in our minds, where they can gather more and more strength. And lastly, Dr. Ong talked about finding new purpose, new goals, in order to develop ourselves, have more interests, and so that we can have focus in our lives. Thank you again.